All right, what is up, PT on Ice crew? We got Facebook Live over here. We got Instagram over here. My name is Dr. Mark Gallant. I'm lead faculty for the Ice Extremity Division alongside Lindsay Huey and Dr. Eric Chacones. Pumped to be here with you on Clinical Tuesday. Before we get rolling, just some updates and some announcements. We really don't have that many courses to announce over the next few weeks. All of our live courses have wrapped up for 2021, so we're in mending the nets time, gearing up for the holidays, and we're going to be pumped to see you on the road in 2022. So if you haven't already checked out the course offerings for 2022, both live and online courses, definitely go over to the website and check those out, because we're already starting to see some of those early winter and spring courses start to fill up. So definitely make sure you get your spot on all those. On the Vice side, tonight we have Mark Goodman from Wild Health and CrossFit Health is going to be speaking on Vice 8 p.m. Eastern tonight. So that's so huge for the fitness forward community, as fitness forward medical providers, that CrossFit is launching this and that Wild Health is launching this. If we want to be the physical therapy community that comes alongside these people, that they know that we're the fitness forward providers, it's going to be important for us to show up in a big way. So if you're part of that virtual ICE community, make sure you log on tonight and check out Dr. Mark Goodman's presentation at 8 p.m. Eastern tonight. As far as today, what I want to talk about, I spoke last month about the importance of knowing why you do that specific exercise you're doing. So last month we touched on some shoulder exercises, side lying external rotation, the wall slide, and why we choose these specific exercises when we're going after rotator cuff pathology. Well, today I want to talk about the reverse Nordic. And the reason it's so important to know why we're choosing the reverse Nordic for our anterior thigh pain. So those individuals that have quad pain or maybe some quad tightness, why do we like the reverse Nordic, and why do we teach this in our extremity course? Again, Dr. Justin Dunaway always says that beliefs and expectations are what outcomes are built upon, so we have to know why we're doing this exercise. If you don't know why you're doing this exercise very intentionally, even if you say all of the right things, your patient is going to start to pick up on your nonverbals. They're going to be a bit unsure, because they're going to be like, oh, man, Mark doesn't look like he's so sure of this exercise. And they may not even be thinking that. It may be just subconscious. So being very intentional with your exercise selection and knowing the why behind it so that your patients can pick up on it. Well, why is the reverse Nordic so important to us? Well, we have to go back to the anatomy and biomechanics, right? When we're looking at what sort of exercises are actually going to put tension on what muscles. And as we got into more of the pain sciences and those sort of things over the last 20 years, we kind of shied away from this specific biomechanics type thinking. And then even more so, as therapists got hip to the idea of it's the compound movements that actually build robustness and fitness. So things like the squat, the step up, the lunge, those sort of exercises from a global health perspective are really going to be our big rocks as far as big building fitness, these big compound movements. But that doesn't mean we need to throw out some of these local tissue exercises that we were doing, right? Sometimes an individual muscle or a specific musculotendinous region can be the driver of someone's symptoms. And even from a centrally dominant perspective, that area may be the area of the homunculus that's not totally shaped and needs some additional work on it. So having some specific tissue exercises in addition to your big compound movements is always a nice way to go from a rehab perspective, and not or. So why do we like the reverse Nordic? Well, if we look at the biomechanics, when someone's doing a step up, a lunge, a squat, those sort of exercises, what we're going to see is all of those exercises have knee extension and hip extension combined. So as the knee extends, the hip is going to extend also. Well, what we know is the rec femoris is actually a knee extender and a primary hip flexor. So it's the opposite, right? It wants to flex that hip more than it wants to extend that hip. So from a nervous system perspective, our nervous system is going to bias towards the vastus lateralis, the vastus medialis, the vastus intermedius when it comes to those squats, lunges, and step-ups, right? It wants to use the most efficient path possible, and the rec fem is not going to be the most efficient path for that extended hip. So it's really you're going to get a big, robust strength or hypertrophy gain in those other muscles potentially. So what we need to do is find something that's really going to maximize stimulus to that rectus femoris. If we think from our palpation exam, our range of motion exam, that this muscle might be the big problem overall. So what we're going to focus on here, a couple exercises that could be really good are knee extension and seated hip flexion, but they both have issues, right? So the knee extension is problematic because it's just kind of clunky. Like, how many times have you sent someone home with bands or strapping weight to their shoes to try to do knee extension? They're just like, I don't really have a great place to do this. So it's just a little bit of resistance and barrier to someone continuing to do that at home if they don't have a knee extension machine at the gym they're going to. So that one, even though it's really going to be nice for that rec fem, it's hard to get people to actually have a place to dive in and do that. The other exercise, that seated hip flexion, the problem with that is you're already in a bit of a shortened position, so that you're in a little bit of a relative hip flexion, which is going to cause active insufficiency, which means that when a muscle is in that shortened position, you can't put a maximal amount of tension on it, which is going to make it maybe not the overall best choice for either of those exercises, because knee extension, you're in a hip flex position, and that seated hip flexion, you're also in a hip flex position, so you're not going to get max tension and torque onto that rec fem. That's where the reverse Nordic comes in and is a beautiful exercise for those individuals. So for those of you not familiar with the reverse Nordic, you're going to be on the ground, kneeling. Your hips are going to be fully extended. You're going to squeeze your glutes. You're going to brace your trunk. And then you're just going to lean back as far as you possibly can. This is going to create a maximal amount of torque on that rec fem, because as the knee bends and goes into more flexion, you're going to be at maximal amount of tension on that rec fem because the pelvis isn't moving anymore. So this can be really, really nice from a couple perspectives. Again, you're getting that maximal amount of torque on the system, and it's direct torque towards that rec fem, which is really, really nice. The other beautiful thing about this exercise is that it can be done anywhere. There's no equipment necessary, right? All you need is a pillow, an Airx pad, something where you can kneel on and then start to lean back. If you're a real savage, you don't even need that. You can just pop on the floor and start to lean back. The really other nice thing about the reverse Nordic is the knee is going to be the axis of rotation. So the further range of motion you go back in, the more torque you're going to provide. So if a patient's not quite resilient enough to go all the way back, that's great. You just have them go a partial range to where they feel that maximal amount of tension, and then they come back up. As those tissues get more robust and resilient, you have them go further and further back, and because the chest is getting further from the knees, it's more and more and more torque. It's the same thing as adding plates to the barbell. Another cool thing is if someone's can't quite tolerate that enough, where we need to regress the exercise a bit, all you do is add a little bit of hip flexion. So they start in a little bit of hip flexion, stay there, and then lean back. That hip flexion is bringing the chest a little more over the knee, so it's going to decrease the overall torque. If someone's doing really well with them, they can go all the way back as far as they can. The way to increase the torque is hands overhead. That's going to create a larger moment arm. The center of mass is going to go even further back, and so that's a nice way to add some additional tension or torque to that exercise. If they're even more savage, you can put a small weight in their hand and really take it as far as you need to go. So you can progress that exercise any way, shape, or form just by adding more range of motion, arms overhead. You can regress it by going into more of a hip flexion. The other nice thing about this exercise, and why we love it in the extremity course, is that if someone is having some tightness, some anterior tightness, let's say you do that Thomas test, and when you're doing the Thomas test, you notice that their knee is all the way extended out. So you latch onto that knee and try to bring it into a little more flexion. All of a sudden you're like, man, this quad is just not moving. Or if you do a prone knee flexion test and you're like, man, their mobility is just kind of junked up. Well, oftentimes the rec fem can be a primary suspect, because it's that biarticulate muscle where it attaches at the patella and at the anterior inferior iliac spine. So oftentimes that is the muscle that's a bit gunked up. Well, the reverse Nordic is a great way to eccentrically load and get more mobility out of that muscle. We know for just doing stretching exercises that oftentimes they're going to be transient because the person doesn't own that position. Well, the reverse Nordic is going to force the person to have a lot of load and control through a full range of motion, which can make it a really, really nice exercise as far as gaining mobility. Cool. So overall, again, don't throw out your local tissue exercises. We want and not or. We're going to do both step-ups, lunges, squats with this person, but we're also going to add that reverse Nordic in if we think that the rectus femoris might be part of the problem. Love to chat more about this exercise in the comments. Hit us up anytime. If I don't see you all before the holidays, happy holidays to everyone. Pumped to see you all out on the road in the new year.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.